In this video I'm going to talk to you about my journey with stabilising knife scales, knife handles, because everything that we do is a bit of a journey really, and we learn, we make mistakes and we learn and we improve, and then that's been my ongoing journey with knife making. You know, I've got better over time. And not only have I got better at building the knives, but I've got better with all the other processes that run alongside as well. Because just like anybody, when I started making these knives, I started with zero knowledge. We all start, whatever it is we're doing in life, we all start off with a big fat zero, and it's from there that we build up and we build on and we add until you get to a point where you can't get much better, and you don't know what you don't know until you know it, so to speak. Now this is my pressure pot. This is just one of the processes that I go through to stabilise my wood. I like to put them under pressure. These are currently sat under 4.5 bar almost of atmospheric pressure. That's about 65 psi. The more astute of you will have noticed it says 40 psi on the pot there. I do run it at its limit. I've seen these pots running at 80 psi, so I think I'm pretty well within the safety spectrum of the actual chamber itself. I keep it connected to my compressor, which is down here out of sight, because there is a very slight leak, and over time, if I didn't have it connected, it would lose pressure. So the 50-litre tank in the compressor just keeps it topped up, and that 50-litre tank will keep it under pressure for a month probably. But I tend to run my blanks under pressure for about 5 or 6 days. The valve itself is almost about to blow, actually. I can tell. If I just touch it, it'll probably go. There you go. So it's just released a little bit of the excess pressure there. But this is the final, this is the penultimate process. After this, the blanks will be baked in the oven at 100 degrees centigrade to harden the resin, set the resin off. But before they've been put in here, we will look at these in a minute. Before we do look at them, I'll just run you through the previous processes. One of the first processes is when the blocks are first cut. You put them into this insulated metal cabinet, and here they'll sit. It's about 30 degrees centigrade in there, and they'll just sit and they'll just dry very slowly. Sometimes with certain pieces of wood I might have to seal the end grain to stop it from cracking. There's a piece there that has actually cracked on the end, but it doesn't appear to have gone in much deeper than that, so I can see how far it's gone in. It's gone in up to there, so I might be able to use that on a neck knife. But I would have normally, if I get a problematic piece of wood, I will seal the end grains, and then it just dries from the sides. It's just a slow process, but it stops the splitting. So they can be in there anything up to 6 months or even longer sometimes. From there, they'll then move into the oven here, which is controlled by a PID controller. This is currently sat around about 62 degrees centigrade in there, and I'll dry them at 62 centigrade for about 12 hours. So there they are, already beginning to feel a lot lighter, and they're quite warm to hold. After 12 hours, the temperature in here will be ramped up to 102 degrees centigrade. They're sitting there for another 12 hours, and then that removes almost all of the moisture. The next process is vacuuming them. I have 2 vacuum chambers. This is a 4" by 18" Turntex cactus juice vacuum chamber. It's a very good chamber, but it's a backup chamber now. I've now bought a larger chamber. The simple reason is that I like to have my wood blocks in a receptacle, so that I can move them from the vacuum chamber immediately to the pressure pot. The drawback with this being so narrow is that I haven't got a receptacle that'll fit in there that I could actually sort of vacuum and then remove and go straight to the pressure pot. And also the number of blanks I can do in this is limited because of its size, so I've gone up to a larger vacuum chamber. This is the new vacuum chamber that this is the vacuum chamber I use mostly now. It's 18 inches tall and it's about 10 inches in diameter. There's plenty of room in there. As you can see, it's only an aluminium pot to get my receptacle with the resin and the blocks and put it in there. The process that I use, I've got 2 vacuum pumps. This came with this unit actually. It's a cheaper pump, but it pulls just as strong a vacuum as the industrial pump. You're probably looking at about £150 for a vacuum pump like that. A vacuum pump like this is the Robinair 15401. You're looking at £700 or more for a vacuum pump like that. That's a 2-stage pump, that's a 1-stage pump. But they both pull the same ultimate vacuum, which is around about, it varies depending on atmospheric pressure, but around about -28 to -30 inches of mercury. The process that I'll run through, the blanks will go in there. I'll run the pumps maybe for half an hour until most of the air, or until the main amount of air and fizzing has died down. Then I'll isolate the pumps. I'll isolate the chamber and then switch the pump off. On this pump I've got a valve here I can isolate the pump with, and it's a very good valve as well. And then leave the vacuum and the blanks under vacuum for 3 days, minimum of 3 days. Occasionally I might just run the pumps and I'll see the remnants of any moisture coming out of the exhausts of these pumps. The good thing with this pump is that it has over here a gas ballast valve. What the gas ballast valve does, it eliminates any liquid, any water that's built up in the oil, and it vents it through an exhaust which is running through the handle. And even though they've been baked in the oven, I'll still see vapour coming out, and it condenses within the tube, and I can put my finger in there and it will be wet with water. It's not now because the pump isn't running, it's totally dry. And I find it takes a minimum of 3 days, 3 whole 24-hour period days under vacuum to remove all of the air, all of the remaining moisture, and the pumps can run and there's absolutely no bubbles at all in the cactus juice, in the methacrylate resin. Now, so here we are back at the pressure pot. The blanks have been under pressure, under 4.5 bar. Just think of this for a minute. 4.5 bar. So when it's at 0, we've still got the weight of 1 atmosphere. So that would be the pressure that the blanks would normally be under once a vacuum has been released in the vacuum chamber. They'd be under just nothing, no pressure at all. but the actual fact is that they are under 1 bar of pressure already, because that is the weight of an atmosphere. And I'm sat here, you're sat there watching this video, and you're surrounded by 1 bar of atmospheric pressure. So although it says 0 on the gauge, that's really 1. So you could say that another way of looking at it is that the needle sat at 4 at the moment. We'll say 4 just to make it easy. So basically that's 4 additional atmospheres plus the one that we're already under. So you could say its total from the vacuum it was under to the total pressure it is now experienced is a difference of 5 bars. Now if 1 bar is equal to just a normal atmospheric pressure, then you can say that if they're sat in the resin for 1 day at 1 bar, because there's now 5 bars of pressure, you could basically say that what I've managed to do is to condense 5 days into 1 day. 5 days of effective penetration of resin down into 1 day. So they've been in there for 5 days already. So that's equivalent to leaving them in a normal atmospheric pressure for 25 days. I hope this is making sense. There may even be more gains. It may be more than that. Anyway, ultimately what I'm hoping for is that my blocks that would originally have floated will now sink. That's what we want to happen, and the only way to do that is to release the pressure. So I'll isolate the tank and slowly release the air. I'm back in a minute. La 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 have a bit of a tidy up. Right, we're down almost to 0. That's it, we're down to 0. So I can now safely undo the lid of the pressure vessel. And I can pull out the receptacle, and this is the receptacle. It's just, this used to hold acetone. In there, I'll bring you in for a closer look. Take you off the tripod. Make sure it gets a focus. So in there I have, what you're seeing is a weight. It's an old door lock. It's a brass door lock that was just put in there to weigh everything down. It's very heavy. And then I've got a piece of gauze. Well, here's the blocks, and here's the resin. The resin has been used a few times. You can see it's gone a darker colour. That's from the wood that's been in there over the time. This piece of walnut, I think, is a floater. So he's not quite fully stabilised. He's not far away. He needs a bit more pressure. This piece here, this is not there either. He's a floater, so more time required in the resin. However, the rest of them are sinkers. You can see how readily they're sinking. So all those blocks in that one batch, just these two aren't quite ready, and they'll go through another process. I might need to vacuum them again before I pressure treat them, but I will get them to sink. It just might take another session. These can come out now. So even though I've gone through all that, I still have two that were floating, two that haven't fully taken the resin on. So how these people on the forums are getting their blank stabilised in an hour of vacuum and 2 hours soaking afterwards defeats me. If I can get 80% success rate through 3 or 4 days of vacuum and 5 days of pressure, then they ain't going to be getting stabilised wood for what they're doing, unless it's like balsa wood or very punky wood, because that takes the resin on very well. But intact solid woods, no, they don't. Just out of interest, I'll bring you back in for a closer look. We'll put this untreated piece of wood in and see how that fares in the resin, see what it does floating wise. Bring it across. This is just normal wood. Let's see what that does in the resin. Oh look, you can see how that wants to float. There you go, look. Anyway, I don't need these pieces of wood just yet. I don't need them for at least another week. So let's see what you can see. So I put them in there, weighed them all down, made sure they're covered. They can go back into the pressure vessel. I want to make sure my hands have got no wet resin on, because it messes up the seals. It messes your seals. Place the lid on. I'm not happy with that. Then I'll put them under pressure again. When tightening these heavy duty wing nuts down, you do it sequentially. So I tend to go diagonally. It might be that the next bit of pressure for another few days finally gets into those two blocks that floated and makes them sink, or it might be that they need another session in the vacuum chamber before they come back in here again. But I will get them to sink. That's the important thing. Let's repressurise the pressure vessel. Close the valve first. Slowly add pressure. For those of you that have made it this far, There's a reward for you. There's 3 of my latest knives I've just finished. These have yet to be stropped, and I've got to finish the leather work off for them. There's 2 standard sized classics and 1 larger classic knife. Stabilised yew. When I first started stabilising yew a few years ago, English yew wood, it was a very hard wood to stabilise. But I've learnt the process, and now I get very good results, as you can see. The wood is like iron. It's hard as iron. Very pleased with these. Tapered tangs. The hand finishing I'm very happy with. That's the extra large. That's been built for a customer already. That's one has been sold or will be sold. These 2 standard classics. These are the same size as a Woodlaw. Similar handle dimensions. Tapered tang. This one's got red liners. The liner material is G10. I did read someone's comment on Instagram saying, oh, they always seem to pop in photographs. Well, that is what you're seeing is unadulterated imagery from my camera. I mean, that's the colour of my skin, that's the colour of the wood, that's the colour of the metal, and that's the colour of the liners. This one's got green liners. Interesting marks in the wood. Totally natural. All hand finished, all hand built, every stage of it, and you can hopefully appreciate now the amount of effort that goes into just the one process alone of stabilising. In these knives there's just tons of processes. That's one of the reasons why my knives are always going to be built in small numbers. I hope this video has been useful to somebody.